Hello and welcome to Almost 30 Podcast.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the show. So glad you're here. How are we feeling?
Let's take a moment. Take a little moment. It's so nice just to come back to presence. Taking a second. The day has started. The day is going. You might be in the car. You might be at work. You might be cleaning the house. You might be on a walk. Whatever it is, but it's always good to take a second, to check in. It's actually not as hard as we think.
Truly. And not as cheesy as we think.
I know. That's the biggest thing that's the biggest trick the devil did play, was making us think that
things are
cool.
Yeah. It's like a cool factor.
Yeah. It's like there's a coolness. Like if you're like, hey, everyone, let's breathe. You're like,
I'm like, turn this podcast off. Oh, wait, what?
Yeah, honestly, turn this podcast off. I'm going to turn on Dua Lipa and have my brain melt. This is going to be a really beautiful episode. If you're new to the podcast, welcome. We've been doing this for 6 years now. Lindsay and I are best friends. She lives in New York. I live in LA. We have a community of amazing people that are really supportive of one another through our membership. And we are really here to support you in your evolution through amazing conversations, through tools and resources, through content, whatever, is going to resonate with you. We hope to provide you a vehicle through what we do. So welcome to the pod. Kimberly Snyder is here. She is a dear friend of Lindsay and myself. And she is just so kind and incredible and special. And this conversation is a good one between friends.
Yes. When I first met Kim, I was like, whoa. It was one of those people that I met in LA, not early on, but probably like halfway through my time in LA. And I just remember feeling like, oh my God, these type of people exist. Because she is such a light, and she is so, we were talking about presence before. It's like she is so present. And sometimes when someone is so present, it can be a bit like jarring. Yes. Because, most of us aren't always present. Like our mind is kind of in different places. We're anticipating things. We're thinking about what just happened or what's going to happen. And I don't know. I just felt, she's human, so she probably does that too. But I have always felt her to be so, so present, just so positive, just a lovely little angel bug.
She is, dude. When I was blogging, so I had a blog for a long time, the 100 blog, Keep It 100. I actually started it when I was living in New York City, probably in 2012, maybe. And one of my posts was Kim's green smoothie. And it was so hilarious because the post was like, this is an amazing green smoothie. Here's the recipe. And it was like basically just copied from her website. Oh my God. There was like literally a stock photo of a green smoothie, her recipe, nothing interesting, creative. It was basically like repurposing her content to put a green smoothie, but she was like an OG in the space, truly. Yes. Someone that was like the first of her kind doing green smoothies, doing sort of the diet, nutrition, lifestyle vibe that I feel like is so prevalent in LA. It might not be prevalent everywhere, but it feels to me about like the food's vibrational quality and the food's energetic quality. But it was funny that I had admired her for so long. And then now, I'm friends with her, and she is beautiful and amazing and lives this life that I just admire so much. They have a house full of love. It's messy at times. It's just all about the human connection of life with her kids and her husband. And even now their house in Hawaii, that's just the best. So she's living the dream in California and Hawaii, and is really, really excited about this book, which it feels very aligned to her.
Yes. Yeah. If you don't know Kim, she is also the founder of Soluna. So, incredible supplements. Detoxy is our favorite, so check it out. But she is a 3-time New York Times best-selling author. She's a spiritual guide. She's a meditation teacher, nutritionist, obviously, and holistic wellness expert. And her new book is one that it's the type of book she's never written before. And I think it's the most Kim of all. It's called You Are More Than You Think You Are, Practical Enlightenment for Everyday Life. And it's just incredibly powerful. I think this will be such a beautiful supplement for people who are really on their path and fine-tuning their spiritual practices and just kind of tuning up their experience in the everyday and not just kind of unconsciously going from one thing to the next. So I'm excited for you all to check out the book. And she has some incredible, practices in here. For example, she has some exercises on becoming fearless, which sounds like kind of a grand concept of like becoming fearless. What does that mean? But I did these writing exercises, and it was really interesting to uncover some of the shadows that really fed these fears and how they were like playing under the surface for so long. She also gives you step by step to kind of just build that courage. And it's in these small moments that we kind of build that confidence around, just tackling these fears. So there's so many exercises, stories, examples, which I think are so important in books, just to kind of give context and illustration to her concepts. But it's such a good one. I'm so proud of her.
Yeah, I love the cover too with the butterfly on it. I think it's really cool. It's like a sacred geometry type of vibe butterfly. And I know that was important to her to have it be something that even she says on the podcast wasn't just like a picture of herself. So it's also cool to see when people are going against the grain of what they should be doing or what like the normal process would be like of like having a picture of you on the front, kind of holding an apple or like whatever it is. And then actually doing like something that you really want to do, which is having the butterfly on it. And she is someone that has really gone through a process of her own metamorphosis, really, through her separation from her partner, who is the father of her first boy, Emerson, and now to finding her love and creating her brands of business and starting from a process of being all about beauty and being all about health and wellness with food and now being super spiritual and leveraging a lot more of her yogic practices in everything. And for me, she's a great example of, a process that a lot of us feel like we can't go on, of starting at one place with talking about one thing or doing one thing, but then really allowing yourself over the years to have your work be an expression of who you are and where you're at, rather than having it dictate you the other way. And I think we've done that pretty well, where we were talking about relationships, then we were talking about health and wellness, and now we're pretty much spirituality and self-development. And we really allowed ourselves to dictate our work rather than, vice versa.
Definitely. And you've been over to Kim's quite a bit, but I just remember our circle that we had together, and I just thought it was so special because it was literally, it didn't feel like a grand event where she's like, okay, we're going to have a circle. It was like a part of like her everyday flow, which was kind of like some sort of reverence to herself and others in some sort of way. And like on that day, it was with us and in circle. And it was just so beautiful, and to be outside in nature and just what she's cultivated in and around her home is definitely goals.
Yeah, she has these giant ass crystals at her house. These crystals at her house need like cranes to get them in. They're so big. I can't even tell you how big they are. She has these giant heart crystals, this giant amethyst inside her home that are just so beautiful. And Phil Jackson and some like James Cameron and very random powerful people have giant crystals at their houses as well. But what I loved about that moment when we hung out was it reminded me of, you could spend an hour with people very intentionally, no phones, not distracted, in circle, checking in. And that can really fulfill you and sustain you for so much longer than when you're distracted, when you're on your phones, when you're at dinner, when you're watching TV, when you're doing all these things, when you hang out, and how much more nurtured and fulfilled we can be in our relationships and with ourselves when we actually really, really give time and space to drop in to hanging out rather than like halfway.
Yes. Oh, I completely agree. Yeah, that was definitely a lesson. Not that we're sitting down and we're watching TV with each other.
Dude, to be honest though, right when I said that, to be honest, sometimes, dude, watching TV with your friends is fucking dope. Sometimes it's like, yo, let's fucking drop in and watch some tube. So every once in a while you just need a little tube moment and you just can like talk about the Kardashians or something. But yeah, it's not like we're doing that, but I do think it's like the dinner, just and even just being like, we're gonna drop in. But last thing, I'm reading Way of the Superior Man by David Daida. And David Daida, I don't know how people say it, but it's a book that people talk about all the time. So I was super interested to read it. And he talks about how with the masculine, it's so much more important to the feminine to have that like half hour of deep connection of like conversation, eye contact, touch, play, than having like sporadic moments through the day. And like a man on purpose, it's like really important for them to just be on purpose for when they are, and then really just setting aside that like one-on-one connective time so that she knows what's going on, you both know what's going on. And I really love that point because I think it's true. And especially for two people that, Justin and I both work from home. It's like you kind of have those moments through the day where you're kind of touching, playing, connecting, whatever. But it's so much more valuable to have those really intentional conversations or times or walks or meals together where you really are able to like sink in. And I think for the feminine, it's like we know what that feels like and we know when that happens. And so Kim's sort of, circle that we did together was like that, very intentional, very mindful, and just like we knew the intention we were bringing into the conversation.
Yeah, the feminine definitely needs that. And I do think the masculine too.
For sure.
I think they need it, but they don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I have so much to say. I want to do a whole conversation about that book. It's fascinating. I was like talking to my therapist about it, like one of the chapters, and she's like, that sounds like it makes me mad. I'm like, you don't get it.
Is your session? Is this your session? Or
I'm done with her, to be honest. So if anyone has a good couples therapist, let me know because I'm absolutely done with her. She cannot hold the container. It sucks.
Oh, fuck.
She literally cannot hold the container. I'm like, are we just entertaining you or what? Like, is this interesting? Literally, I'm done.
That's interesting. Okay.
Because you've got to be...
Oh, yeah. I'm interested to hear, how she's not able to hold that. That's really...
Dude, she's just... And I don't think she gets me. This is a whole nother conversation that we won't get into, but I don't think she really understands me, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense.
She doesn't understand me.
Well, you probably intimidate her, maybe.
Maybe. I think it's just... Whatever. Give me your Rex. Give me your Rex. Okay, Kimberly Snyder. She's also been on the podcast before, so you can search Kimberly Snyder Almost 30 and find our first conversation, which we had a few years ago. We've also been on her podcast. The book is You Are More Than You Think You Are. It is out now. We highly recommend it. From her line Saluna, we love her Detoxy, which is really, really good. It's like a magnesium compound. That's amazing. And then you can find her on Instagram at Kimberly Snyder.
Thank you all so much for listening to Almost 30. If this episode or any other has really impacted you, whether you share it with a friend or give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, we really, really appreciate it. And our membership is open for enrollment right now. So if you have been thinking about joining the Almost 30 membership, if you have heard the hype is totally real. And it is where Krista and I are pouring so much of our time, love, and attention into. We have monthly workshops, 2-hour workshops. We have live hangs with Krista and myself. We have meditations and downloadables to support you in our monthly theme. We have extra episodes and more. It's just... it's a really, really special place. The community aspect, I think, is the most potent. Girls in there are connecting all the time. And because it is intentional, like I am joining a membership for this purpose, the energy is different. People are there really to do the work is oversaid, but yeah, I guess do the work. But there's no riffraff, we're really there with pure hearts, and it's really a blast. So I highly, highly recommend joining. It is super affordable. You can go to almost30.com/membership to learn more.
I love the monthly sound baths that we're doing. So the monthly integrations and monthly healings that are also a part of it are one of my favorite new additions. And we're always optimizing and making it better each time. So if you're going to be joining now, you get the benefit of having the best membership experience possible. So we'll see you in the membership, almost30.com/membership, almost30.com for anything else, for show notes, for blog posts, for information about us, our courses and programs. We also have Podcast Pro there to support podcasters, all of the things. Enjoy this one. Send it to a friend that you want to have conversation about, that you want to talk about what we talked about on the show. It's a great way to connect further with your community. And we'll see you on the other side.
Love you guys. Bye.
Love you. Bye. But it's interesting because when you were last on the pod 2 years ago, 3 years ago,
Yeah.
I don't even know how long, it was like you could feel the transition you were making.
Yeah.
Like I just
Yes.
remember talking to you in the little courtyard area, and you were talking so much about like nature, interconnectedness, like eating, how it was just like the energy of food. It was so much more spiritual than I think what you've done. And it's interesting because I feel like we've been on that path too a little bit, where we came into the space where like food, eating, nutrition, blah, blah, blah. And then once you're sort of like in it, you're like, oh, it's not about that.
Right.
It's so much more.
It is so much more. And I think, for me, I've always shared what has been really, relevant in my life and what's helped me the most. And the funny thing about this, you guys, is that, I tell the story a little bit in this book about how I went backpacking for 3 years. I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. I thought at one point I was going to be a doctor. Then I interned in a hospital. Not for me. Just was not my path. So then I didn't really know what I was going to do. So I worked for a year, saved some money. Then I went backpacking, which, just blew my heart open, blew my mind open. And one of the countries that had such a big impact was India. And this is where I really started to learn about all these different teachings, these ancient teachings, which are really relevant for connecting, for raising your energy, for all of this amazing stuff. And then I came back to New York, and then I had no money. So then I started hustling, right? I was starting to teach yoga. I did a yoga teacher training, and then I went back to study nutrition. But I had this, feeling, this passion. I really want to publish a book. So at the same time, I was applying these principles, and then I just started a free WordPress blog. And I'm not a tech person, but I could figure out how to start a blog. And then all I was doing was teaching yoga, and then I was sharing the blog. I didn't know anything about SEO. I didn't know anything about marketing. And it just really organically started to spread. And then my first celebrity happened to found the blog. Then I got on a film set. Then I started working with all these different actors. And then I started doing these national television shows, and things just started to blow up. And my first book proposal, which my first publisher was HarperCollins, and my first editor's name was Sarah. I said, here's my proposal. It was a book called Catching the Fire. And it was a travel memoir about some of these teachings. So it was never supposed to be about food from the beginning. And then Sarah looked at my blog at the time, and she said, wow, she's like, people though are really gravitating towards the food stuff and your recipes. Why don't we do a food book first? And she goes, then we'll do this book second. Well, that was 10 years ago. Exactly this year, 10 years ago, the Beauty Detox Solution came out. So that was supposed to be the first book. And then that did really well. So then the second book was Beauty Detox Food. So it went in this direction. But at the same time, I was working with all these actors. This is before I had kids. And I was living with them for 4 months. I was doing all this stuff. And it was never, you guys, it was never just about the food. I always said from the beginning, it was, 15%, this like outward stuff that we can touch and hold. But it was so much about, the groundedness, the emotional, the meditation, all of it. But outwardly, I was known as a nutritionist. That's how I was labeled as the studios paid me. That was my line on the payment slips, but it was always about all of this. So it feels funny 10 years later, 6 books later, I've come back to what I really know will help people the most, what I really want to share. And as I share with you guys in the book, I don't think I would have been able to share all this had I not gone through, those really difficult times in the past few years that just kind of, I hit rock bottom and then was climbing my way up. And then, my whole life changed.
that rock bottom moment of like having no money, coming back to New York and just...
Oh no, not that one. Liz,
which one?
That was a rock bottom moment.
Rock bottom.
But
Which
that was like in the beginning when I was this
Yes.
like, just kind of bright-eyed
Sure.
newbie coming back. The rock bottom that I talk about in the
Yeah.
book was when, I was a new mom. My older son was born. And then right before he turned one, we found out my mom had cancer on Valentine's Day. And then she passed 6 weeks later. So it was like, you hear these stories sometimes where it's like out of nowhere. Like this was really out of nowhere. She was with us at Christmas. She was energetic and fine. Find out she has cancer. She's gone. And then a few months later, that sort of blew me open. And I was looking at my life and I said, kind of look at everything, and I wasn't as deeply connected as I wanted to be with my partner at the time. So then I left and moved out with Emerson, who was, just over 18 months. So I lost my mom. I was a new mom, and I became a single mom. So that was the real rock bottom place. And then out of that, Saluna arose with the 4 cornerstones: food, body, emotional well-being, and spiritual growth. I started to really expand what I wanted to talk about publicly. And out of that, this new book came as well.
Yeah, I think like what you're experiencing with your celebrity clients and seeing firsthand that it was so much more than food. I can imagine during that rock bottom when your mom passed and you left with your son, it's like you almost had to bring that inward and like actually, because I can imagine you're giving so much when you're with your clients. It's like, oh, this is actually something that I have to practice now and really fortify on my own. So I can see why that kind of manifested itself so clearly in such a rock bottom.
It is true. It's, when everything's going great in our life, it's easy to just kind of like bounce around and kind of dip in and out of things. But when you are in those really challenging moments, that's when, you realize you lean on your practice, you lean on these tools. That's what gets you through. And, the great yoga guru, Paramahansa Yogananda, who brought yoga from India to America. He was really the one that established yoga here. And, all kinds of people flocked to him, from the Beatles, eventually Elvis Presley, like Steve Jobs. All these people were learning these principles from him. He said something along the lines that the funny thing about life is the things that seem so real are not. And the things that don't seem real are real. Meaning, one of the yogic teachings is that what we see with our 2 physical eyes, the whole Bhagavad Gita, this ancient text, is about this great journey, this great battle of life where the senses are constantly pulling us out. So it's like what we see, and we see in today's world, we're constantly looking on social media, we're constantly comparing ourselves, looking here, looking down the street. Am I skinny enough? Am I successful enough? Do I have enough kids? Where am I in my life? Do I stack up all this stuff out here? Where in reality, it's about tuning into this inner vision, what the yogis call the third eye. Wayne Dyer says all this physical stuff is less than 2% of what we really are, right? So it's this formless part of us, the true self, that we can all tune into and tap into. And when we start to do that, it starts to bring forth our best ideas, our best energy, our vitality, our appearance changes, our energy changes, and everything that we start to create in our life changes from the inside.
Yeah, with Yogananda, like what was your process to finding him as your guru or like learning from him? Because I actually don't know a lot of his teachings outside of our conversation, so I'd love to hear about that.
So I grew up Catholic. I grew up Christian, and so I don't know about you guys. I loved Jesus, but I didn't feel as connected to my church. I felt like, my family went to church every single week, and it was a little bit ritualistic. But, I knew that there was, higher intelligence, universe, whatever you wanted to use, but I didn't have the practice to feel that deep personal experience. So then I went backpacking around the world, and I was in all sorts of cultures. I went to over 50 countries. And when I went to India, like it was so, rich. They say when you go to India, rich in culture, rich in spirituality, you either love it or you hate it. For me, the first time I went, it was 3 months, and I just fell in love with it. And so I described this story at the beginning of the book where I was just wandering around Rishikesh, which is known as the yoga capital of the world. I'd never done yoga before. I'd never meditated. I never knew about any of this stuff. And then there was this bookstore, And it was, I don't know, just kind of like one of those places you just kind of randomly go inside. And I was drawn over to this shelf with all these little blue books. And it was like specifically like calling out to me. And so I picked up this book, and it happened to be from Paramahansa Yogananda. I had never heard of him. And I started reading it. And he was talking about this oneness, this underlying unity of all things, and energy, like this underlying energy matrix. And he was starting to speak to me, and I felt this like fire sensation in my spine that I had never felt before. And I was like, what is going on? Who is this? So I bought all the books for like 30 rupees, which is, not much money at all. And I started reading it. And at first I was like, wait, does this mean that I'm like going to be like a Hindu or yogi? Like, what does this mean because I'm Christian? Like, I didn't understand it yet. But then as I started to, get into the teachings, what he's saying is there's this oneness. It's like we can say universe, source, God, consciousness, higher intelligence, whatever word you want to use. Let's say it's the top of the mountain. There are many paths up the mountain. There are many forms. There are all the, different ways we go up. But what he was talking about was this unity, these unifying principles of how you can have a direct experience with spirit, with God, with universe from inside of you. So it was really the pathway of true yoga, true yogic science, how to really meditate in a deep way. Not just close your eyes and relax, but actually connect. Because the word yoga means union. It's about connecting with that true self inside of you. So then, and the word guru means one that shows us the way from darkness to light. So it's a path for deeper connection to the one, to these, to raising your consciousness. And the word enlightenment, which is, not a word that I would have used a few years ago, but it's the subtitle of the book, Practical Enlightenment for Everyday Life. It means in the day-to-day battle, so to speak, of life, enlightenment's about more awareness. It's about awakening up to that, who we really are, not just this, physical doing what my hair looks like today. It's okay to take care of the outside, and we're in this bodily temple, so we're meant to take care of that. But to this, like who we are, our spirit individualized inside of us. And when I started to do that, that's when, I went from being a broke backpacker to learning how to publish books, to, just create this career, create this business, and then eventually how to, create real love and find my soulmate and this family and all this stuff. So people always ask me, how did you do this? How do you get started? And I say, well, here's my full playbook now, because this is what really reconstructs everything. The food part is one part, and all the great yogis always taught about food because food is energy. And so food will help support your practice. And of course, if our body is riddled with disease and sickness, it becomes a distraction. But it is, like you said, Krista, it's just one part. It's not everything. It's not the end goal. It's a supportive pillar of the overall lifestyle.
Yeah, and I think when you're talking about the different ways up the mountain, it's like you can think about religion. I think about Catholicism and a lot of different religions, and it's like beware of people and situations that say there's only one way.
Yes.
And I think that's when we can, even in culture, even in politics, even in with leaders that you're looking at, there's no one way. And I think that's when we can know to be careful of that person or that dogma or that ideal, because there's not only one way. That's why we're all created of these like living fractals of the divine. And I think it's so interesting when you were backpacking, it's like I think about a lot of our community, it's almost like you got lost to be found.
Oh yeah.
And I think there's that beautiful process of allowing yourself to be lost and to get lost and to just rediscover what was meaningful to you and like what was important to you and what was like who you were. And so can you expand upon that a little bit? Because I feel like there's so many people listening that really want that experience but are scared.
Yes. So I have a lot to say about backpacking and journeying. I want to say one thing, Krista, to what you said before that about, the religion and dogma. So Yogananda was so clear, this is not about religion. You can learn to meditate and be still and learn these practices, whether you are agnostic or an atheist even, or, Christian or Jewish or Hindu or Muslim. It has nothing to do with that. It's these principles, for universality. So it has nothing to do with religion. And also he says, do not ever accept anything blindly. Test it with yourself. So you test these meditation techniques, you test it. And if you feel more peace, if you feel more bliss, if you feel more joy, if you feel yourself, backing away from things like feeling really competitive or pushing versus this inner power, you know that peace inside of you is starting to grow. So nothing is to be just, accepted blindly. It is to be tested. The yogic science, he says very clearly, test it for yourself. So talking about the journey, when I started, I was so anxious. Mm-hmm. I was in my head all the time, and my whole sense of self was from outside of me. So it was, am I cool enough to get invited to this party? Am I pretty enough? Will people like me? And so it was just the thoughts that were oppressive, and I didn't sleep well at all. Back then I was a huge partier, so I think if I didn't, drink to the point of blacking out, sometimes I would be up for all hours of the night. I was really an anxious mess. I was, controlled by my food cravings. Like everything was out here. I needed food to make myself feel better. So I think when I started traveling, in a way, I was seeking, but I was almost trying to escape myself in a way. And there was the distractions of traveling and seeing things at the beginning. And then what I started to realize, because it was supposed to be a few weeks, and I did it really cheaply, you guys. I bought a car in Africa for, I think, $4,000. And I drove around from 7 months. And I slept out of my car. I put my tent down. And then I sold it at the end for $2,000. And I just kept going. South America, Eastern Europe. Mostly I was in Asia and Africa. Asia, by the way, if anyone's starting to travel, is the easiest place. If you go to Southeast Asia, Thailand, Cambodia, I mean, it's set up for travelers. Do not attempt rural China first. I do not recommend attempting rural Africa first, because those places they're not set up. So you have to be a more seasoned traveler. You need to, learn get your travel feet under you first. But I was, then I started to realize when I got to India, someone said to me, one of the yogis, he said, "There's something wrong with your eyes." And I was like, "What do you mean?" And he was looking in my eyes, and he said,
"You're dope."
He said, "You need to learn how to meditate." So it was he was looking into me, and he could see my unrest.
Wow.
And he was seeing me. And it was I get goosebumps to this day. I remember that day when I was like, "Oh shit, I can't run from myself." Mm-hmm. Right. So this is when I started to understand, it was so hard when I started to try to be still. It was so hard when I tried to sit. It was so hard when I tried to meditate and even look at myself. There's a chapter in the book called You Are Whole. And it, talks about looking at all your qualities, the ones we like to admit, the so-called good ones and the so-called bad ones, and starting to integrate and realize that those are actually all just the surface behaviors. That's all just the ego playing out, and all the suffering. I believe all the stuff, the yogic teaching is everything that we, the reason we suffer is because we put our identity in this ego. We think we are these qualities. We think we are the behavior. We think we are, what we do, how good our careers are, what we look like, all this stuff, when in reality, the true self, the essence inside of us is beyond all that. Even if we, mess up, we F up, we do all this stuff, there's an unchanging part of us. There's a stable part of us, because the true self is the steady, stable, creative, courageous, intelligent part of us. So the more we connect to that, and that's what I started to learn about on the road, because I had all this time, I was starting to read, and I was like, wow, because I was so defined by my grades, my achievements, I had to be, this or that, or I felt like a failure. And it was oh, there's this part of me where I can soothe myself. I can validate myself. I can show up for myself. And I started to connect to that. And it's very practical. So it's not just this woo-woo, oh, I feel good. But once we start to, and again, there's another chapter I'm so excited to share the playbook called You Are a Creator, right? So it's how you take this form and you start to create with it. You start to put it into practice in the world. So then I was like, oh, I have this and this, and I can do this. So I'm going to take that energy and, channel it into writing books, into doing all these things. Because again, the ego says, well, I think this would be needed, or maybe I'd make more money doing this thing. I think people would buy this. So it's an external frame of reference versus letting our true gifts come forward. And so that is, when I was backpacking, I think, that was the biggest thing that I found was, oh, it's inside of me. Because everybody thought I was crazy. Everybody thought, oh my God, you're wasting your education. You're out there. My parents were like, we hustled, we paid for your college, and now you're doing this. But if I didn't do that, I don't, for me, it was breaking the mental patterns and going out of the Western world and then reclaiming, the true self and then bringing that forward.
Yeah, I think it's so powerful. We were talking to a few high schoolers the other day, and they were talking about taking a gap year. And this, your traveling is, obviously much more extensive, but it's this idea of breaking out of what's expected and the system. And I feel like when we're on those tracks, it's really easy to always look for the outside validation, the guidance, the tell me what to do, what will be the most successful, what is the next guidepost. And so I just think that's so incredibly powerful. I'm curious, like how, when you started to get clear on your true gifts and where to direct your energy, I want you to speak to this because I feel like we're in a world where everyone's distracted by the social media. This is what I should do. She's making money doing this, so I could probably do that too. So let me try to be this.
Yes.
And so how do we really tap into our true gifts and trust them and direct that energy in a way where our ego is not as much as it can be, not in control?
No, that's a great question, Lindsay, because otherwise everything's pulling us out here. And in the Bhagavad Gita, again, which is about the great battle of life, it was written thousands of years ago, but it is so applicable to today. So practically speaking, we have to balance our time and attention in the outside world and our inner world. So we have to be out here, right? We have to cook food. We have to take care of our kids. We have to run our businesses. We have to do things, but we have to methodize our life, which is a term Yogananda used. We have to get organized with our daily schedule and our daily routines so that we prioritize our inner connection just as much as the outer connection. And I'll give you guys a practical example. So for me, I have two kids. One is 16 months old and one is 5. So from the morning it gets bananas. And then I, have a podcast too and running a business, doing the books. Like I know what it's like to be really busy. But for me, I know the difference in when I'm doing my routine and when I'm connected and when I'm not. So baby gets up early, but nowadays I go to bed earlier. So I get up earlier. The first thing I do is I do my meditation practice. And it doesn't have to be like a full hour or half an hour. I put out these practical enlightenment meditations that are 7 minutes now, these free meditations. But it's so important to drink from that well, so to speak, of deep peace and intuition. Intuition is one of the most useful things. There's so much science about it now. When we listen to our gut instincts, we make fewer mistakes. We're more focused. We create more and more and more. So we start here. Then when the day gets crazy, when we're on social media and we're like, it's easier to go back, close our eyes, take a breath, and go back to that well of inner peace if we started the day. Because every day we come from this altered place of consciousness known as sleep. So it's almost like New Year's every morning. So we sit and we meditate as close to waking up as possible. Right? And then practically speaking, first thing in our body, ideally from the Ayurvedic standpoint, would be warm water with lemon, ginger, because that heat brings a physical presence into your being, right? Because power is to be found in the here and now, not up in the thoughts. So right away, we want to start the day being here. So the warm water actually makes you feel your body. It makes you feel grounded in yourself. And also, practically speaking, it stokes Agni, digestion. So we're not wasting energy in inefficient digestion all day. It starts to get that really going. And then, I could go on, but I think having a really strong morning practice and a really strong evening practice. So the end of the day, same thing. I think it's important to have a break between when we work and when we start to come back into ourselves. For me, that break is a warm shower. So when I take my shower at the end of the day, no more emails, no more editing, no more, all this stuff. And it means, okay, here's the, the delineation in the day. So when I take a shower, I imagine, it's water coming down, but almost like warm white light, just like hooks, cords, attachments, worries, to-do lists. It's all kind of just going off me, off my back into the drain. So I'm just cleansing myself. And then it's important, you go about your evening. I think a little bit more stillness would benefit almost everyone. So, turning off Netflix a little bit earlier, having more time to journal or self-reflect, definitely getting off social media earlier, and then evening meditation. I also think it's important that you batch time when you are on social media. Because again, to your point, Lindsay, like how are we supposed to listen to our true self if every 2 seconds there's like an alert coming in. And there's research that shows when we're pulled off a task, it's like 90 seconds until we can come back in, or whatever the exact second is. So all day we're dissipating our concentration, which is one of the limbs of yoga. Dharana, concentration, is how we create success in life. So we need to be the managers of our own life. We need to have times to meditate, times we're doing outwardly, times when we're focusing on our project, and set times when we're on social media looking what everybody else is doing. So it's like, okay, 8 to 8:15, 12 to 12:30, whatever, 3 to 3:10. Like really write it in your schedule and start to discipline yourself not to be on there or not to just be watching YouTube videos other times, because otherwise your whole energy starts to leak bit by bit. It's like eating all day. Then your body's constantly burning up digestive enzymes. Your digestion's working all day long versus having those set meals and snacks where your body works to digest and then it rests.
Yeah, that's huge. The attention residue of being on social and just the energy that it takes. Because every time you're like looking at something, your brain's like, what are they doing? What's going on here? And you kind of go off on this trail of whatever you're looking at, and you have to like call yourself back, basically. And I noticed too, because I'm working on like honing my psychic skills and even like communicating with animals or communicating with whatever. And the most important part of that is like conscious attention, or like being able to like be direct attention, like very clear, or else you're not going to get anywhere. And I've noticed that like I'll have it for a second and then it's gone, and it's making me insecure about like there's a feeling of like unsafety, like because I can't have focused attention on what I want to have. And when you're in that sort of realm or space, you need to have like focused, direct intention on whatever it is that you're doing. And that's with all of life. It's like our conscious awareness and attention is like the thing. Like it's the thing that allows us to create, to be in relationship, to have really the life that we want. And I think we really just don't look at that as important as it is.
Totally. And Yogananda talks about, the reason most people don't create what they want in life is not because they're not smart enough. It's not because they don't have the skills. It's because people use about 1/10 of their concentration on anything, right? And then it gets pulled and they're trying to multitask. They're trying to do all these things. So again, back to the practical nature of these teachings and these techniques and exercises for really honing what he calls dynamic will, right? So when you use your will and when you learn to really concentrate, you can create magic. I mean, I experienced that in my own life when I got back from backpacking and I was, kind of like, what am I going to do? But I want to write these books. Oh my gosh, I can't even tell you guys how hard it was to write the Beauty Detox Solution, 300-page book, no research editor, no ghostwriter. I had to like, oh shit, like I had to sit here and write this whole book, but it was like this training. I was starting to really get deep into the practice and I was calling on it and it started to just flow and I started to, create. So it is like a muscle, Krista, you said, like, don't feel like, oh gosh, my self-esteem or like I can't do this, because it really is a practice that the more we go into it, the more it gets so powerful. And again, people are always on the surface of life. What might two eyes see? Oh, I saw this post about this and she's making more money or she has more followers or whatever it is. It's giving all our power away to the surface. It's like the choppy surface of the ocean. When we go deeper, that's where the power is. The power is the vision of the third eye. This is like 99.999% of what we are, but we give all away our power to the surface. We learn to connect in, and then we learn to go deeper in that concentration. And then we also learn, wow, I am. Source of real confidence is in and I have a chapter on confidence. You know what Moses said when he came and asked the Almighty, what is this? What are you? And the Almighty said, I am that I am. So in the truest sense, confidence comes from I am a unique creation of spirit. And that's it. I'm alive and breathing. I am this. So this creation of spirit will create something that is completely different from Lindsay and Krista and everybody else. So I don't have to feel competitive with other people. I don't have to worry that this field's super crowded or, how many people are trying to do a podcast or trying to write books or you can say that, trying to be a banker or trying to be a stylist, whatever it is. you can say that about anything, but only you bring your unique essence. So then it's you learning that concentration, and then that chapter is very specific about practices, how you take that and you write about this. You have to put it pen to paper, and you start to delineate, you start to extract the essence, and then it becomes into form. But it has to start from the inside, connecting to your essence first. So we create from the inside out instead of the other way.
I am Team Cup over here. It has changed my life using a cup from Flex.
Yeah. I mean, I'm team disc, but it's also from Flex. So you guys you have a variety to choose from, and, no longer kind of just grabbing whatever tampons off the shelf. Like,
I was on vacation and I didn't bring my cup, and I was on my period, and I forgot how miserable and archaic tampons are. I was leaking. I had to change it every couple hours. I was uncomfortable. I was really uncomfortable actually with putting bleached things and products inside of me. And I just was reminded how amazing the cup is from Flex. I get the Flex cup. You can get multiple different sizes, but having it has been so sustainable. It's easy. I don't leak. It's comfortable. It has changed my life. And I'm so sad that I was in my 30s when I found the cup.
And if you're nervous about using it, Flex has incredible support. They have videos that show you how to put these in, and they're super easy. I practiced a couple times and I got it. So the Flex cup is a reusable cup. It's super, super soft, and it is actually the only cup on the market with a pull tab. So you remove it the way that you would remove a tampon. It's super easy, and you basically already know how to use it. I use the Flex disc. It can be worn for up to 12 hours, holds as much as 3 super tampons. And for me, this one works really, really well. You can have sex while it's in, and it reduces waste by 60% compared to pads and tampons. So you're saving the planet too. And I just love this company. So if you'd like to try Flex, we highly, highly recommend. Say goodbye to those leaks and messes and lots of stress. Go to flexfits.com/almost30 and use code almost30 for 20% off Flex disc starter kits or 10% off your first Flex cup plus free US shipping. That's code almost30 at flexfits.com/almost30. And again, you will get the 20% off Flex disc starter kits or 10% off your first Flex cup.
My very favorite thing in the whole world is FX chocolate.
I saved some for you in the cabinet.
Yes, I have some in the cabinet. I order boxes at a time. We also sent some to our amazing almost 30 moderators, moderators for our secret Facebook group. We sent them. It is my favorite. They have chocolate down truly to a science. It's vegan, 0 sugar, keto-friendly, gluten-free, and it tastes amazing.
And they have just beautiful ingredients. So reishi, ashwagandha, CBD, phytonutrients, and you're getting all of those things in just this delicious little square. So I have one either after dinner or even after lunch. It's just a nice little treat, low sugar. And they have one for every aspect of your day. So they have the focus. So I'll usually have that midday, and then I'll have the Zen before sleep.
Yeah, I love their Thrive and their superfood. So their superfood one has blueberry and grape phytonutrients, and then it has cacao, and there is a little bit of berry flavor, which I love. And then the Thrive has tryptophenols and it's a peppery cacao. So it's more like a flavorful profile, but they have 15 calories for a little slice. They have great ingredients. It's sugar-free, like Lindsay said, and we just love them.
Love them. Pumped for you guys to try. You can go to fxchocolate.com, use our code almost30 for 20% off, which is a really big discount. Try it out. fxchocolate.com. Use the code almost30 for 20% off. I got a question in my DMs the other day about how I deal with bloating. She had remembered that I mentioned it on my stories a while back. And to remind you all, I take Array. So if you don't know, Array is an incredible natural supplement company with real results. They work in under an hour and they're all natural. and I love the Bloat Formula. So they have a couple hero products, the Bloat Formula and the Calm. I'll start with Bloat. So they're a blend of 5 herbs and a fruit-based digestive enzyme, and it targets every possible cause for bloating. So the relief happens so quickly. I literally took it the other day. I had a bunch of vegetables in these tacos, and I knew I was just going to have a little bit of a time digesting these. I took my bloat caplets. In like 45 minutes, my bloating was gone. I love Array because their ingredients are sourced from the most potent part of every plant. So this ensures their formula works in the time that it does, under an hour. I mentioned I also love the Calm formula. I take 2 of these capsules before bed is my secret, okay? These are a blend of 4 herbs, minerals, and vitamins, which help relax the body and mind. So at the end of the day, after I've had dinner, after I've just kind of like done my thing, I take my 2 Calm tablets, and it really just reminds me like, okay, it's time. We're going to start winding down now. And this really helps any anxiety and just puts my body into a much more restful state, which also helps with my digestion overall as well, lowering my cortisol as well. So I love Array. And if you would like to try Array, we have a discount. As always, almost 30 is the code when you go to array.co. That's ARRAE.co. Use the code almost 30 for 10% off your purchase. That's array.co. Use the code almost 30 for 10% off. I am updating and upgrading the Sacredness of Being Single program, and I am using Issue to help me create beautiful readers for the content that I am creating for those participating in the program. So if you are a creator out there, a marketer, really anyone creating content online, allow me to introduce you to Issue. So Issue is the all-in-one platform to create and distribute beautiful digital content, from marketing materials to magazines to flip books and brochures and so much more. We all know PDFs are kind of outdated. Attaching them to a mass email ain't the look. Issue makes content look better, feel better, just overall go over better. And Issue also works seamlessly with tools you already use, like Canva, Dropbox, and InDesign. I use Canva a ton, so it's just easily integrated. And what's awesome is you make it once and you distribute it everywhere without reformatting. That's my jam. Your content is already optimized for engagement and ready to share. So again, if you're a creator, marketer, designer, anyone who makes content, try Issue now. You must. We love it here at Almost 30. And for our listeners, of course, we got a deal for you. So you can use Issue for free today. And if you sign up for a premium account, you will get 50% off when you go to issue.com/podcast and use the code almost30. That's ISSUU.com/podcast and use the promo code almost30. You can get started for free. Or if you sign up for a premium account, you will get 50% off. That's ISSUU.com/podcast and use promo code almost30 at checkout for your free account or 50% off your premium account. A member of Team Almost 30 slacked the channel the other day and said, "Oh my gosh, I'm going to run out of my House of Wise sleep drops. What do I do?" And I was like, order more, baby. Use our code. The sleep drops. Okay. You have to try, if you are looking to get a deep, restful, beautiful night's sleep, wake up feeling refreshed, you must. House of Wise sleep drops are made of 5 milligrams of melatonin to promote better sleep and 25 milligrams of full spectrum hemp-derived CBD in every single drop. So every ingredient that House of Wise uses in their oils, in their other products like their gummies, is derived from select hemp plants cultivated in the US of A. They have even planted a slew of their hemp plants. It's very, very cool. They are all completely natural, organic, gluten-free, ethically sourced, no additives or preservatives in any of their products. And their products are lab tested to ensure purity and potency. I mean, I hear it all the time from people. Their products are potent. I will also recommend these sex gummies. Okay, so these are in our bedside table. and they are just absolutely delicious. 200 milligrams of horny goat weed extract, you get me, 100 milligrams of maca root, 10 milligrams of ashwagandha. So all of these incredible super ingredients really help to enhance the CBD as well. And these gummies are awesome. You take them 30 minutes before, you just want to get in the mood. And it's just such a beautiful, beautiful experience. Super in your body, relaxed. Trust me, grab them. So for our listeners, we're excited for you. You can go to houseofwise.co. And at checkout, you can use the code almost30 for $20 off. $20 off at houseofwise.co. Use the code almost30. We love this brand. We invested in this brand. And we also love that every purchase, a portion of every purchase, goes to the Last Prisoner Project. So houseofwise.co. Use the code almost30 for $20 off.
How have you have two kids. I'm curious because I'm thinking about like when a child is born and they're born kind of into this world, these various systems and indoctrinations and things like that. It's like at a bird's eye view, it's like a child is put onto these tracks in order to become something, to become successful, to become more educated, to become whatever. But there isn't this, and I don't think our world is yet set up for this, but I'm hopeful that it will be, where like a child comes into the world fully whole, you know? And have you been able to kind of teach your children in a way? Are there practices or things that you say to them or ways in which you allow them to be that we can kind of think about as the future of
yes. I have a lot to say about this one. One thing I didn't realize about becoming a mother, now I've been a mom for 5 years, think of my older is 5, is that there is tremendous potential for healing your own childhood and becoming a mother. So I hear myself saying things to my son that I wished were said to me. And on some level, I'm speaking to my own soul. And the main thing that I say to him over and over again, and he loves it, is I love you for you. You need do nothing for love. Right. And so all our parents are doing their best in their coming, we have our own ancestral beliefs that get passed on intergenerationally. But a lot of it in my family, there was a lot about like doing and achieving. And my mother was an immigrant from the Philippines. And so she came, with not much money at all. So she had to hustle and, climb up and, figure out her financial situation. So there was a lot of that emphasis on doing. So as I've stepped back and, it's amazing, research shows that babies up until 8 months or 10 months, they are in oneness. So like my baby Moses is like, they don't know a difference between me being Moses and you being a separate, being called Lindsay. Everything is still oneness. And then at a certain point, they realize, we've like fragmented you. You're off on your own. You're given this name. You're a separate thing. Everybody's separate. But I think that's why babies are so healing. They say if you put a baby on your heart, it's very healing for your heart chakra because they are in that pureness, that energy of oneness. So I think the way we approach education is also a big part of this. There was this big TED Talk, some years ago from the NASA scientist who said, our education system makes people dumb. And it sent shockwaves. So for me, it was also looking at the education systems that are available because there's so many and seeing, what vibes with each family. For me, it was this emphasis on self-connection before the grades, before the achievement. So Emerson just started kindergarten, 2 months ago. He goes to Waldorf, which is the system that really vibed with me, which is, so much about that, again, that deep, deep self-connection before they go out and have to be pitted against each other with grades and measurements. So, I think there is a lot more available to us as we continue this conversation that, even looking at the way we raise kids and the way we talk to them as well.
Yeah, it's so beautiful. All of like our friends and my friends that have babies, it's like, seeing that conscious awareness and attention given to a child is like the best. It's just a dream. And when you see that not happening, it's like heartbreaking. You're like, oh my God, they don't know what they're doing. It's such a stark contrast now because the ultimate way, or we perceive to know the ultimate way with children. And it's really letting them be this like unique expression, letting them be this like thing rather than forcing ideals upon them. And in the book, I love how you talked about like going beyond numbers. And I see numbers as like the ultimate tool of the matrix, because it's just,
my God.
Like your weight, your followers, your bank account. Like there's just
Your
so
weight,
many. Yes.
Your age,
Social
how many
security.
calories you eat a day. Yes. That is, and I talk about that, that part of the book about, numbers can be tools, right? We look at the speed limits. We want to know like our, blood pressure numbers and if they're really off, and we need to do something major in our lifestyle. So there is some value in numbers. I'm not saying to throw them out completely, but what we don't want to do is give numbers all, give all our power to numbers and think that they completely define us, because they don't. Again, numbers are finite. And it's back to this idea of like the two physical eyes can see the surface of things. But then we go into, this is a whole discussion into quantum physics, which shows there aren't just separate particles. There's waves connecting everything else. Everything is frequency. Everything is vibration. There's a chapter in the book about being magnetic. And I tell the very dramatic story about how I met Deepak Chopra. We ended up writing a book together. And it was this frequency, and you see this in nature. There's this amazing book about the synchronicity that rises out of chaos, where these fireflies start, pulsing at the same time. So there is frequency and energy in all things. And so you can't define that just by numbers, right? And I know for me, when I stopped weighing myself, when I start working with clients, we go past numbers. We don't count calories. We work on digestion. We work on energy. We work on letting go of resentments. We work on finding stillness on the inside. We work on grounding the body, somatic practices. And when we do that, the amazing thing is people lose weight. People have more energy without all of these charts and these numbers and this hyper focus. When I started focusing on these teachings, I was able to climb out of being completely broke into a level of prosperity from the inside. Again, so there's so much more power in this stuff. And, I think that everybody, we can enjoy trends and some of the, latest biohacking stuff. And some of that's fun. But at the same time, there's such deep value in old stuff. And especially in these ancient teachings, really old stuff that hold relevance. And they show you can't measure wisdom or true beauty by a scale. It's just the frequency. It's an energy you can feel, right? Everybody's really beautiful. And the chapter in the book where I talk about beauty, everybody is the true self. So by definition, they're beautiful. But I say the degree in which someone is connected to their true self is what makes someone truly beautiful, right? And they may not use that language, but being connected to the true self means you're really comfortable with yourself. You're natural with yourself. Then you're natural with other people. You're not like, or feeling competitive.
Yep.
It's that degree of connection that is powerful. And that is, who cares how much you weigh? Who cares, how many grams of protein you ate or whatever, and all these restrictive diets. It's beyond that. It's energy. It's tuning into our real power when we do that.
Yeah, it was so funny. A few weeks ago, I got back like health results, or I sent in a little blood test, and I also in the same week like pulled out the scale that's underneath my bathroom sink, which I never use, but I was like, oh, let's just like kind of check in, like, because I'm pretty intuitive and I don't really go by numbers. But I got results back, and there were certain percentages of these levels in my body, and then I looked at the scale, which was fine, but it was like different than I thought it would be. And then all of a sudden, I noticed that throughout the day, I was thinking about those numbers.
Yes.
And I'm thinking about, and while I'm not like hyper stressed about it, I notice like this low level awareness about these numbers that I'm thinking, wow, does this mean something about me? Does this mean, and do I have to focus on this? And so all of a sudden, I realized and I noticed my body was in this like state of stress, and I started to like retain water. No big deal. But like I noticed little things in my body where it was manifesting, because my body was like, whoa, what's happening? Why are we stressed about whatever, and kind of super focused on this? So I've noticed just like these very nuanced ways in which my body will react to or manifest the focus on something outside of me that I'm trying to achieve or change and I was like, I don't like that feeling, though I want to have insight into my health.
Yes.
I don't like that feeling.
No, so it's the balance again, like I was saying, between the inner and the outer. So we can take information, we can look at these tests and look at these results. And of course, like I'm not saying to ignore all numbers, but at the same time, we maintain our inner connection, our connection to our intuition. Because it's true, if that stress that's created, what that does is it starts to disrupt your hormones. There's a cascade effect. Your body will secrete more cortisol. Now there's an imbalance between your parasympathetic and your sympathetic nervous system. Nervous system is connected to your endocrine system and your immune system, and all sorts of things start to go off if we're giving away all our power to all of this stuff. Or if, in a similar vein, if someone says something mean on social media, or you lose 100 followers in a day, all this external stuff, if that's dinging you around, you are constantly going to be fighting this battle of life that feels very arduous. Like you're kind of like battling on the surface versus, okay, all of that's happening, but I know that I'm so much more. I'm connected to this well of peace and such a deep connection to myself, which again keeps getting deeper and deeper and deeper. No matter what's going on, I can meet each moment with clarity, with strength, with resilience. So let's say with, the test came, you would have the calmness, the equanimity, Lindsay, to say, okay, let me look at this. Okay, maybe I should eat a little bit less saturated fat or whatever. You make the decisions, you meet that moment, but the head doesn't keep spinning if, again, we have this inner anchor, which builds and builds over time. And I think we all can get thrown off. So that's why I love to include the practices. And you guys haven't maybe gone through all of them yet, but where comparison comes in. There's a confidence practice for like, how do we break that energy and come back into ourselves? How do I elevate my vibration before an interview or before I'm going on a date? And there's practices for that. How do I get out of the head and drop into the body to listen to the gut? There's practices for that. Because again, it's the practices that get us through our day-to-day life experience. So moments where we feel like, oh my gosh, this test came in, or I spent so much time on this post and nobody liked it.
What do you mean?
Honestly.
It's like, okay, let me take right action, but then I'm still this, centeredness is in here.
I noticed with the numbers that I connect with my family on numbers. Like I was sitting with my dad when I was in Florida recently, and I was like, I'm making this amount of money or like whatever. And I was like, why am I
do the
saying
same
this?
thing. I know.
I literally was like, and I noticed myself sometimes with Justin saying that too. And there's that excitement because I feel more financially abundant than ever before. But it's like, I just was like, what am I doing? Like I was like, it's just like, it was just so weird because I'm like, I found myself in this place of like deducing what we do to something that I felt like he could connect with or understand.
Totally.
That was a place of value within my family. So it makes sense to me.
It makes sense.
But I was just like, dang, this is like, I was like, this is very inner little girl in me being like, be proud of me because I feel like I have this thing.
Yes.
So there's so many ways in which that the numbers piece can sort of work into our life and in our day, even with time. Like I had this past life regression one time, which I actually hate past life regressions, but this was kind of interesting because she's like, you're like a little peasant boy. I was like working in a mine. And I was like, that's dope. I appreciate that this wasn't like a priestess. I really liked it. I was like, I'm not a mermaid. I'm not a priestess. I'm in. And she's like, and you're obsessed with the clock because you're working all day. You're obsessed with the clock. And she's like, you have this obsession with the clock and time. And at that time, I did. I was trying to maximize my day. I was gamifying everything, which was really helpful for getting everything done that we needed to get done. But it's like, then you're like a slave to it, because you're like, oh, I have 10 more minutes. I'm going to do this. Then I'm going to do this. And you're just like waiting for the next moment and the next thing. So time is also another tool in the numbers game of like essentially mental slavery.
Well, and also like, I know I really connect with what you're saying about your dad because that was a pattern in your relationship.
Yes.
Was like, look at this, good job, honey. And so it was like this validation, connection point. And the thing about this work as well is that it really transforms your relationships and they can go deeper and deeper and you can change your relationships with everyone in your life. We're talking about with kids, with partners, with your parents, with everyone, because when you start to see who you are, you start to see the light in everyone else and it's very different. And you can look in someone's eyes and it just starts to deepen this connection. So you start to, the conversation naturally shifts, or maybe your dad wants to talk about certain things, but there's more compassion. There's just deeper love. And for me, and I share about this in the book, in the intuition part where I met my husband. Oh my gosh, I have to tell you guys a funny story. We had a Halloween party, a couple weeks ago, a couple months ago now. And it was, so this dad that was one of Emerson's friends, and he knew my ex. And then he met my current husband, and he was like, wow. He's like, I don't know what to say. He's like, it was like 180, 360. He's like, dimensions different. So my partner with my ex-partner was, someone that I met when I was in a, place in my life where I wasn't, as deeply connected to myself. And he's a great guy. Don't get me wrong. I've never said anything bad about him. He really is great. But it just was, a certain level. And then I went through that breakup period I describe in the book, where I met with one of the monks at the Self-Realization Fellowship. And his advice was, treat your home as an ashram and just go deep for at least 5 months, So for the first, 5 months, I just meditated. I had Emerson, so I would take care of him, put him to bed, and I didn't really go out much. I didn't see that many friends for that period. I just meditated, read the scriptures, reflected, journaled, did all that. And then some months later, I was at this random dinner party. I was not looking for anybody. And here comes John, my hubby. And if I was me a few years ago, still more like looking with my two physical eyes, I don't think we would ever have gotten together, you guys, because he's so different. He's, covered in tattoos, gold grill in his teeth. Big, huge carnivore, meat eater, plant-based, just all this like surface stuff, like really into MMA fighting and motorcycles and all this stuff. And, the mind part of us says, oh, that's not my type. But when I met him, you guys, and that dropping in part, I just could feel this heart connection that you can't explain again with words, with numbers, with measurements. And so it was like, And then I was like, we talked for a while. I was like, oh, yeah, I gotta go. Because I, do my a beach walk in the morning. And he's like, well, I'll come. I'm like, really? Because it's in like 5 hours. He's like, yeah, I'll come. So when we did this beach walk where we just talked for a couple hours. And then that evening I had an event. I was doing some speaking for Levi's. And I was like, I don't really ask guys on dates or anything like this, but do you want to come to my event with me? And he came. And then we didn't see each other on Sunday. And then Monday we went to dinner and he told me he loved me. Yeah. And then we got married, 2 months later. But the funny part is I started meeting his friends and they were like, he always said he would never get married, never have kids. He went in for a vasectomy and didn't end up doing it. But it was just like, it was just this connection. He was like in a more still place in his life too, as was I. And now you guys know you both met him. We all hugged. So sweet, so, big-hearted. And this connection just grows and grows and grows. And I think too with relationships, so many people I know are looking for that soulmate love or the deeper friendships or whatever it is. And this is the work, again, when you connect into your vibration, your energy, it starts to magnetize out. And there are there is supportive science to this. This isn't like woo-woo stuff. You start to really be able to find your people.
Yeah, I know. It just reminds me of our obsession with seeing. It's
yes.
I have a program through Almost 30 that we do, the sacredness of being single. And so many girls are like, I just want to find my person. I want to find my person. And they're looking. And there is kind of this cognitive dissonance that keeps coming up because they're not really trusting the heart coherence of it. Rather, they're like depending on, well, he's not what I thought he would be looks-wise or profession-wise or what he likes. And sure, there are certain things. I think there are like values, that probably you guys should share. But there is something to the contrast in relationship and between partners that really helps you even more to realize who you are.
Totally.
Because you're not constantly being reflected back like, oh yeah, we're so similar. Oh yeah, we always like the same things. Or, oh yeah, there is this like constant growing with the other where there is that contrast that I see in you and I experience too, where I'm like, oh, I really appreciate this because it almost like reminds me who I am. And then I'm like, I appreciate who this other person is too.
And also you realize like all this stuff we think is important. Like, oh, we both like to ski. We both do yoga, asanas. Like that's such small stuff. Like in the grand scheme of things, it's still doing. It's not the energy of the heart.
Yes.
And there's I have a lot to say about trying to find a partner too with You Are Love chapter where we have this idea, I think, in our society that love is something that you get. So it's like this noun, like I'm going to get it from this person. I need to have a partner to get love. And that's a very different energy. That's a lack energy. It means I have to get it outside of myself. That's completely false. The truth is that love comes from the inside of us, and certain people light up the love that is in us. So if you're looking for a partner, instead of this desperate lack-based trying to get it, what you do is you switch your perspective of love from a noun into a verb. So you activate the energy of love inside of you. So you let love come through you as an action. Even things that seem so unrelated, like, sending a loved one every morning as a practice, a text to tell them you love them. Now love is in action. It's starting to flow through. The person you get coffee from in the morning, being extra kind, giving them love. So you start to become the source of love. Back to frequency, you become love activated inside of you. And that becomes the magnetism that could draw more potential partners to you than you could ever want. And so that's what I was doing without even like focusing on it. I was creating love and action inside of me. Wasn't trying to get it outside. And then boom, literally just ran into hubby John, future hubby John. So it's about switching from the getting, the lack, into the abundance of love as I am the source. And sometimes I think self-love is like a very broad topic. It's very esoteric. Like I know I'm supposed to love myself. I read this like inspirational quote, but what do I do? What you do is you live it. You become it. Love becomes an action. And again, lots of practices that I have to say about that because I came from that lack-based place of love, especially with my parents and wanting to have the perfect grades, getting the validation out here versus, this is a game changer when we become the source, when we tap into the source.
Yeah, Ram Dass says love is not about giving or receiving, it is about being.
Yes.
And I think that's so beautiful because it's hard because I remember most of my life not knowing what that meant and being in relationships where it was almost like when I wasn't receiving love, feeling like something was wrong or feeling like my source was out, it was the source. And it was almost like, if I think about it in like a weird way, it's like a little bit of siphoning, we're kind of like siphoning this experience. But when you can be in that frequency of love all the time, and I think about with my animals, like with animals in general, it's like, you love this being so much. And there is a love frequency that they have because they're pure love, but also they're not giving you love per se in the way that we understand it, but yet we're feeling this like incredible feeling of like deep love for an animal. And it's kind of like, I think about that. I'm like, oh, my capacity to love is like shown in the way that animals make me feel because they make me feel this like deep love.
So I love Ram Dass and I love Eckhart Tolle. I love all these teachers, but it's true. Sometimes I would read it and I would think, I get it on some level, but how do I practice this? Like, what do I do? Which is why it was so important to me to write this book, being very practical. So I'll say, let's say you want to find a partner, you want more love in your life, you want deeper friendships. Focus on 5 minutes in the morning on activating the love energy. And here's what you do in 5 minutes. Number one, like I said, text a different loved one every day. Just tell them you love them, nothing in return. Number two, give love to the first being that you see. So it's your pet, cuddle your pet. If it's your child, if you your partner, if you live by yourself, then just, maybe massage your feet for 5 minutes or touch your body or be loving with your body. And then next, write down a list or think of 3 things you're grateful for. Because gratitude is an act of love where you're not trying to get it, you're not trying to change the present moment, you're not trying to control anything. You start to cultivate in love. So you can email someone in a loving way from your work. 5 minutes, focus on frequency of love shifting up leveling at the beginning of your day. Nothing to do with the dating apps. Nothing to do with trying to get out here and like, this anxiety of like, I'm not partnered yet or I'm trying to get love. Activate love as an action. 5 minutes in the morning and watch what happens in your life because it'll start to shift pretty quickly once you start to do these practices.
Yeah, I always am like, now that I have like conscious awareness, I'm always thinking about situations or times in my life where I have that like memory, that feeling. Like I was even thinking about when I used to summer in Michigan, because we lived in the Midwest. It was like we used to summer in Michigan, and there was this feeling of like freedom that I had. And it's like, okay, how can I have these beautiful like library of memories that I want to cultivate more of in my life? So whether it's freedom, whether it's expression, whether it's feeling whole or feeling like liberated, like thinking about these bank of memories and pulling on them in meditation so I can experience that and be in that frequency. So that feeling is giving me the feeling of liberation or the feeling of freedom or the feeling of expression. And I'm just really meditating at my house.
Well, the Heart Math Institute, which is one of the places that I, reference research from in the book, talks about, this incredible frequency of the heart being 60 times, I believe it's 60 times more than the brain. And one of the things they talk about is this ability, as you're saying, Krista, to self-generate these emotions. So in those 5 minutes, working on self-generating the emotions from the inside, even if it's remembering a scene from a movie that you loved or, whatever it is, those memories, the scenes, whatever makes you feel that energy is the frequency that's coming inside of you. So it's good to have some go-to, you can write them down, memories, movies, scenes, whatever times in your life that will be the impetus to help you self-generate those frequencies. So you don't have to be like, oh, well, I didn't really have a great day yesterday. So you're twiddling your thumbs. No, go to like, oh, remember when I got my puppy, or, remember when we went to this house, summer house, whatever it is. And those are very practical tools to call on. It's great.
You mentioned that, I think I was listening to an episode of your podcast and talking about writing the book, and you said it was you channeled this book. And so I would love to talk about the difference between your other books, this book, and the process.
Oh, I love this question.
And how to get out of the way, because I feel like everyone, just like you said in the book, is a creator.
Yes.
And in my experience, like with singing, I know the difference between when I feel connected and it's not all me, and when it's me thinking too much and trying too hard. So like I think this would be really helpful for people, anyone who's trying to create something. How do we get out of the way so what's meant to come through can come through?
Yes. So I'll share a bit about this experience, and I'll give some practical tips that anyone can use. So this book was not a convenient time per se. The idea, guys, it came through like lightning. I felt it in my body when I was exactly 34 weeks pregnant with Moses. And this is not a time when I was thinking about writing a book. This is a time when I was thinking about slowing down. But it came through, and I was just like it was so clear. It was like, this book wants to come into the world. And I didn't know what to do. So I reached out to Deepak Chopra, who was my co-author 2 books ago, and I told him about the book, and he's like, this book belongs with Hay House. So there was this like very natural flow where next thing I knew, Deepak put me on an email with Reed, who's the president of Hay House, and he was like, well, what's your book about? And I told him, and then a few days later, I was presenting the idea over Zoom, and I wrote a sample chapter. And then I signed my book deal, I think 3 days before Moses was born.
Wow.
And then I gave myself the full, more than 40 days Ayurvedic postpartum. 60 days I waited. And then I just started writing. But to your point, Lindsay, it was so different. I wasn't writing from this external place of like, what should this next book be? It's been 1.5 years since my last book, so it's time to get another book, like kind of researching like what's out here. I was so connected to 2 things. And I also, besides the creator chapter, I talk about this in the warrior chapter. So the warrior chapter talks about this idea of throw yourself into the din of battle and do not worry about results. So what that means is when you are, number one, creating from passion and truth, there's tremendous energy in that. And number 2, if you really want to start creating and manifesting success, you must include the good of others in your plan. Rarely does a warrior go to battle for themselves. They go to help others, inspire others, help improve their lives in some ways. And it doesn't matter if you are, designing shoes or you are a pet store owner, whatever you can have the best company culture in the world, or you can make people feel good in their bodies, or you can inspire people with your words and your practices, whatever it is. It doesn't mean literally like I go and volunteer at this charity. It can be part of that too, but it's like what we bring to it, the frequency, the way that we help others through our dreams will really start to grow. Why? Because then you're tapping into the collective. You go from that limited being into the true self, which is connected to all things. In yogic terms, we can talk about the Akashic records, the great wisdom that you can pull in, all the ideas, the frequencies, the oneness of spirit, the oneness of God. Now you're not just working for the little ego that wants to, whatever, be seen, have more, whatever, validation, followers, money, whatever it is. That stuff will come, ironically, as a byproduct much more easily. But when we're creating, we must include the good for others. So with this book, Lindsay, and I admit, not all my books were so pure. I started to get some success and I was like, well, I want, this book, I want people to read this book. It was a little bit more about like me. This book, I do not feel like is my book. It feels like I'm in service to this book. Like, so I got out of the way. The passion came through, and 100%, this book was like, here's my playbook for what's helped me the most. And from the beginning, I told you guys, this was supposed to be like, some of the original book. It wasn't just about food. This is how I created abundance. This is how I magnetized in these opportunities. This is how I found my soulmate. This is how I feel a lot more confident today. All this stuff. So it was written with that. And so it just feels very different. And also it takes away the stress of worrying about results, which I think is what blocks people's creativity, because they're constantly being like, well, I think people will buy this more. You are blocked from the voice of your intuition. You're blocking the true self. It has to be that pure passion, your talents coming through that you connect with, and then helping others. And then, like the Gita teaches us, we can't worry about results because it's in the action, righteous action that we're taking. That's the energy. And then the right people will find it. And we just have to trust that.
It's powerful.
I was thinking about when you were talking to with the ego, it's like when people are trying to channel or they're trying to bring through something or trying to create a business or change their life in some way. It's like that's why healing ourselves is so important, because it helps you delineate and not act from like a wounded place. Because the wounded self is the one that the ego like hides behind and causes you to create something for validation or for love or for notoriety or all of those things. So there's so many different aspects of healing that are so important to us, including finding that thing that will not only fulfill you from a passion perspective, but also be your greatest service. And it will help you do that service outside of the ego. How do you like keep your ego in check? Like, what's your relationship with your ego? And what are some of the Yogananda practices and principles around the ego?
Oh, well, the whole book is talking about going back into the true self. But anytime, let's say at the outset of a project, for instance, if you're trying to figure out what to do next or, what you're going to go for, instead of asking the question, like, what am I going to do? We expand. So many of Yogananda's teachings are about expanding, right? Because the ego is small and limited, competitive, and expansion means harmony. It means unity. It means sisterhood, right? It's in brotherhood and all the in-betweens, right? It's all this like beautiful expansion. So instead of saying, what am I going to do? What's going to benefit me? We turn the question into, what does the world need today? How can I serve? Right? It's like always expanding beyond yourself. So you check in with every decision. You check in with every, action step you take. Is this the best for the collective? Or is it just kind of serving me? Because that's small and that will keep you small. So, and a lot of, what Yogananda talks about is, this idea that life should be mostly service. And again, service in all the different ways. So if we start to find ourselves into self-obsession, which means the repeated thoughts are me. Do people like me? How did my post do? How am I looking today? Me. It's natural. It's normal. Don't beat yourself up, but just expand beyond that. Again, that's that love and action. That's where you start to think of others, in passages of the Bible where Jesus said too, like, do unto your neighbors as you would do unto yourself. There's so much wisdom in that and practicality, because we expand our love. We expand our connection. We expand these In quantum physics, there's these terms where like the frequencies line up. And
Entrainment.
Entrainment and where people want to help us the same way and more connections come in, and there's practicality to it. So we need to always keep expanding. And so when we're sitting in meditation, again, it's not just about relaxing my body. Back to this, primary principle, meditation is really about that union, connecting to the true self, the spirit inside of us, universe inside of us, whatever word you want to use, source that's inside of everybody else. So we feel expansive. And so our thoughts become more expansive and we're able to tune into more expansive ideas. And we start to think beyond our limitations. And we have a different idea of who we are. Back to this, we are more than we think we are. We put ourselves into these labels of like, I think I'm really good at, just making recipes, or I'm really good at, XYZ. But actually, like our greatest gifts could actually be latent inside of us. And maybe some of those professions gave us a clue about part of it, but maybe that's not the full thing. It's like, so we have to keep tuning into this expansive awareness. One of the practices in the book where I talk about growing the light inside of you, and really tuning into our Sushumna Nadi, which is our spine, and then feeling that expansion out through that. And again, not to sound so general, but it's very, specific. But when I started doing these practices, the expansion we feel inside of us as we sit in meditation without having to control anything outside, it starts to expand that energy in our life. So the life force that we're activating, the kundalini in our spine, everything that's coming through these different channels starts to channel through back to will. It's all connected. What we put our will towards, what we put our focus towards, it just starts to expand all these projects. And the amazing thing is, and this is a big message I want to say, it doesn't have to feel like this pushing in this, again, the competition, like the cattiness, all this stuff, none of it is needed because you are activating your own energy and you realize everybody can do the same. There's abundance for everybody. Everybody has their own light. So you do it, and then you want everybody to have the same thing because you realize that other people in no way threaten your success or your beauty or anything. So these are the principles in yoga. Again, I will just say from personal experience, when I started to really practice this, opportunities came in. I sent my third book to Deepak to get a quote, but I had this feeling inside of me. We were meant to do more. And I kept focused on this expansive feeling until one day I just met him. And the energy was like, Deepak, it's me. He just reviewed my book. And he felt the energy. We went to a coffee shop, 2.5 hours meeting. We decided to write a book. We came up with a book titled Radical Beauty. We wrote the 6 principles like that. It wasn't pushing. It wasn't like, what do I do? All this thought, go beyond thought. When Eckhart says go beyond thought, he's talking about dropping into this beingness, dropping into the true self. And there are very practical ways to do that. And the more we do that, again, and here's the other thing, it's simple. It doesn't mean it's easy, but it's like, it's not more work than you're already doing because the pushing is more work. It's just a shift of focus. But when we do these practices, 5 minutes, 10 minutes a morning and the evening, it's like changing everything. If the Titanic changed to 1 degree, it would not have hit that iceberg. So when we do these little things, we don't have to go on like a 10-day Vipassana thing, unless we want to. We don't have to just radically change our whole life. It's these little practices that really change your whole life. And that's what I experienced personally.
Yeah, that's why I love you bringing in your personal stories into the book, because I feel like as a society, we want things so quickly and we're so impatient. And we don't think that 5 minutes of, meditating on a feeling or an expansiveness or activating our spine or what have you can actually shift something. We want the feeling right then and there, or we want the result rather right then and there. So I just love the examples because it's so true. And I feel like we, again, to bring in the numbers and the time, we feel like we're on this timeline. But what if we don't feel this way by this time? Or what if you don't get this thing by this time? And it tends to just make us want to rush through or really not deepen into these practices and trust these practices because we're so obsessed with but I don't have it yet.
Well, the solution to the problem is not to be found in the same system as the problem, right? So this like system of the ego, which tells us we're not enough. I need to hurry up these timelines. I better get on 10 more dating apps because I'm not finding this person fast enough. I need to like 10x my business in the next 2 months. It's the same level where the problem is, which is, identifying with the ego. That's the core issue here. And so what I'm saying is that the solution is in a totally different system. And it goes back to, because again, in the book, I reference all the different traditions because there's wisdom in all of them. And this shows the oneness of all. There's a passage in the Bible where it talks about building your house, on a sturdy foundation, I'm paraphrasing here, versus the slippery sand. So with these practices, what you're building is something sustainable, this inner connection to your creativity, to your gut, to your real confidence. And day by day, it gets stronger. But you're not building it on something like, oh, I put all my energy into this, class and I didn't really use any of it, like to, help me with my SEO or my social media, whatever it is. It's real. It's like, so we start to put energy. And I know when people, I believe everybody has the true self inside of them. This is accessible to everybody. So I think when people start to hear some of this information, there's a part of them that will say, yeah, I resonate with that. And listen to that part because that's the real thing. It's not just scrambling on the surface. It's not trying to spend all this money and do all this stuff. You can do that, but you need to balance it with the true self, with these teachings, which are free and easy and like accessible to every single person, right? So it's like, again, think about that. It's like dieting. It's like billions of dollars, and people are like trying one diet, then they're trying the next. Oh, maybe it wasn't paleo, maybe it's keto, maybe I need to go back to this or that, and it's just like on the same system versus trying something completely different, which is working with energy, which is how I broke through to all those different clients that were trying to lose weight and feel better. It was like, hey, we're actually going to throw out the numbers. We're going to work on energy, like the energy of digestion, the energy that's very different in whole foods versus these fragmented foods, the energy of naturalness, where we have all the macronutrients, right? It's a different energy. Get rid of the energy of, scarcity, lack. We're working with energy here, and that is real, and that is true.
Yeah, and the Law of One, recently I opened up to this chapter, and Law of One is like a channeled text. And the person that who's the entity was being channeled through, her name's Carla. And he was talking about when he was being channeled through her, he's like, there's a lot of distortion in the entity today because Carla gave up buying new clothes. And he's like, but she didn't give it up because she wanted to be of service. She gave it up because of like a lack mentality of feeling like she had to do something. And so it was like, he said that the energy that she had behind her action, although it was good, had created distortion within her body. So it's a lot with food. Like if you're eating this food because you want to be something other than what you are, or you want to get somewhere, and you're eating it with this energy of lack or of anger or frustration, it's like that isn't the way to feeling better. How we do the work is the work, and that's a lot what you talked about too. So if we're not on the journey, being in the vibration or being in the energetic field or frequency of where we want to be eventually, then we're not getting closer to the ultimate goal.
Exactly. And abundance is also a big part of the book, abundance in all ways, but including financial abundance. Because again, I know what it's like to be broke. And when I was in New York and I got back, I would eat 3 oranges for lunch sometimes because it was $1. And I read a study that showed that oranges would keep you the fullest of any fruit, right? So I was like, I have no money here. So how do I stretch my money? So I know what it's like to be broke. And, now I've, created more prosperity. And I talk about the story in the book about where, my husband and I bought this dream house where you guys have been to, which felt like it was very crowded market. There's not a lot of houses there. It feels like all this limitation. And what I will say about that is it goes back to this idea, as all things, going past the physical eyes into the inner vision. So the physical eyes say, oh, look at my bank account. Look at how much money is there. Here's this, here's that. The inner vision teaches us that when we are connected to the true self inside of us, we are connected to source. And we are tapped into infinite creativity and infinite abundance can come through. So there isn't a limitation to this money. There isn't a limitation to ideas. I don't have to worry about sharing my best stuff because more will come through. And there is this abundance state that you mentioned, Krista, that we can get into, which is a frequency where we don't have this lack of, oh man, I shouldn't over tip because I need this money for rent this month. I mean, we have to be practical to an extent, but it's also living life with the knowingness that we are tapped into a source. We're like plugged in. Zzz. And once we're tuned in, once we're tapped in, more will always flow. So there's a lot I have to say about that as well, because that was a big dramatic shift in my life I experienced through these teachings as well.
Got those. Best house ever. The Hawaii house is the best house ever. In A Course in Miracles, it says, you ask not too much of the world, but too little. And I love that part because it's so true. You know, we kind of try to intellectualize how I'm going to buy the house of my dreams or how I'm going to live the life that I want. But it's like we don't know what potentials lie beyond what we can see. You know, so when we tap into the energy, we're able to like create that.
Well, it goes all back to the same thing, which is identifying with the ego. So the ego is the limits. The ego is the labels. The ego creates this limited framework, this perspective that we look through life and say, like, I deserve this amount of money. Even though you may not consciously say that, somewhere in your heart you think, well, I could be this successful, or like I could have this. And when we remove the full identification with the ego and we connect back in, that's when all the limitations explode.
So good.
I just love you so much.
So good. Same.
I love you both.
Tell us about the book, where people can get it.
Oh, anywhere books are sold, but also mysoluna.com/youaremore. Yeah, anywhere. Barnes & Noble, Amazon, Target, all the other outlets listed.
Lastly, can you explain the cover?
My gosh, I was so excited about this cover, you guys, that my face isn't on it.
I fucking love you.
I know.
Listen, my other
For
books, there's, one, me and Deepak.
You're the most beautiful. And I just say
know.
for real, because sometimes like there is, when I look at a book and there's like, when I see a person.
You're going beyond the ego.
Yes.
And you're going to oneness.
Yeah.
And that's not you on the cover.
No, I was like, this book is not about me.
yes.
This book is like the teachings that every single person will benefit from. So first of all, I was very clear, I don't want to be on the cover. And second of all, I wanted something, to really illustrate the title, which is You Are More Than You Think You Are. You think about this butterfly, which is in this chrysalis and sort of contained. It's in the ego. It thinks I'm like this ugly brown thing, maybe. And then it starts to, this impulse, this intuition allows it to start to grow out, and then the wings start to come and it starts to fly. So I knew that I wanted this butterfly symbol, but I wanted it to be elegant and, have, some cool imagery around it. So I worked with the designer and I absolutely loved her, and it came to fruition. Thank you.
Beautiful. Draws you in. Well, thank you. We love you so much.
Yeah.
This has been really, really powerful. And as always, we're just huge fans of Soluna too. So I have to plug that. I just
Detoxy
think,
is life.
Yeah, Detoxy is always in the cabinet.
Yes.
Love it.
Yeah. And it's just, I'm so excited that this is that step in your journey, because it does feel so right. And I know you've been like thinking of this for a while, and for it to be full circle where it's almost like the first book you ever wrote. And now it's, this book means so much. So thank you so much.
Thank you guys both so much. I love you so
Love
much.
you.
Sisters, deep friends, deep connection. We sat in circle together, and I just love you guys,
Yes.
truly.
Love you.
Love you.
All right, everyone. We'll see you soon. Bye.
Love you. Bye.
Thank you so much, Kim. Her new book, You Are More Than You Think You Are, is out now. Make sure to grab a copy. And for those of you that are thinking about joining the Almost 30 membership, enrollment is open. We only open enrollment twice a year. And this is just the best place to be, to feel supported in your evolution and any transitions that you're going through. If you are looking for community support, this is the place.
Yeah, I'm really excited to welcome our new members. Thank you to the members that have been with us since the beginning. It means so much. You are so valuable and important to Lindsay and I. Thank you for filling out the survey, for helping us optimize our next round of membership. You will get your merch in the mail soon. You can listen to the other episode we did with Kimberly Snyder by searching Kimberly Snyder Almost 30, wherever you listen to podcasts, to dig into more about her. You can get her book out now, You Are More Than You Think You Are. You can find her on Instagram at Kimberly Snyder, and more information about about us, almost30.com, and then almost 30 podcast on Instagram. It means so much that you're here, and would love to just thank our sponsors at the end of this episode to make sure that we show them a little love and gratitude for supporting us in this episode.
Yes, thank you to Array, Issue, House of Wise, FX Chocolate, and Flex. You can find all discount information for our partners either in our show notes of this episode or on almost30.com/partners. Thank you all for listening. We appreciate you so much. Have a beautiful rest of your day. Take care of yourself, and we will see you on the next one.